was the other night.
Yeah, it's on Carl's YouTube.
Moche Brothels.
Was that Pete from Flathome? Peter from Flathome, who was doing the who knew about lots of.
Is that the Peter Carl
names?
Yeah, that's the one. You know what? You shouldn't involve me in this because it goes wrong.
Earlier, everyone was showing their animals on the camera.
Yeah. I just.
It was a nice personal touch, I think.
Yeah. The rat. He had a rat. Have you seen his rat, Richard?
No.
He's got a pet rat. And Bill had a pet teddy bear. Or pet dog. Toy. So
actually, Jessica, I think you should start.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, Jessica, what I'll do, I'll go off mic because me and Michelle, we do strange things here. Yeah. So I'll just I'll get recording and I will speak to you at the end. Enjoy, folks. See you then. Bye. Bye.
So today, I said the name wrong of these people, Moche people. The reason I didn't say mocha is because it wasn't spelt like mocha is in the coffee.
Oh.
Basically, I'm really bad at pronunciations. No one should let me do anything because it's not my original language, probably. But no, this was something very interesting to look into. I stumbled across this idea. It was a book that I had. It's called The Cambridge Illustrated History of Medicine by Roy Porter. This was a little joy I found that I found in a charity shop. They had loads of books outside and I ransacked all the history ones. But this medical book has been the inspiration for a lot of things that I've talked about, especially when it comes to traditional medicine. And this civilization came to my interest after I was looking through the chapters, and they have some lovely illustrations and sometimes they have some lovely images of the artifacts. And I come across this artifact of different types of artifacts that are associated with these people, and I went down a bit of a little bit of a rabbit hole myself of looking at all the different interpretations that you can get. And it was very interesting how people were able to interpret the evidence that they had before them. What is interesting with these people, I find, is that they were able to document their medical practices, in my eyes, in a very unique way compared to other civilizations. And I think that's why I wanted to focus on them, because I think this is an indigenous culture as well. So I think it's important to keep a focus of them, to keep their practices alive, to keep that being talked about. But I think he's also interesting because it allows us to have an understanding of how everyone was thinking of that time. And I think what you find with traditional medicine is that it tends to go down this spiritual route. So this is this is considered one of the foundations of traditional medicine to this day, and this is a culture that is rich in providing evidence of many practices in the medical world. And I think looking at them is just as important as looking at the big boys in medicine, such as the Greeks and the Romans and the Chinese and all those other, they talked about a lot, but I think sometimes they can be talked about too much, and it reflects away from such amazing artifacts that can provide so much more. These they're more iconographical. The iconography of some of their stuff actually can be interpreted in many ways, and I think that's what's made it so interesting, because you can have a lot of debate with this, you can have a lot of fun, but it's also important to take an account of the people and what they believe to be something that is carried on for generations. But like I said, they're very unique because they don't look at tablets, they don't look at pieces of parchment to write things down on. This is solely looking at ceramic drinking vessels as a way of showing their practices. There is quite a lot of archaeology, I think, associated with this, and that's what really made me smile, because like I said, in medical history, especially when you get to the medieval period as well, it's quite iffy. It's all documented, and you can get, I think the medical world of history it can be a very weird one, because you have so many different disciplines. You have the prehistoric traditional medicine that is focused on with a lot of debate and interpretation, and they all have debate, but what is interesting is that when you get to modern times, things are more sort of clear, and there's more facts known around it, but you can still get a debate. But what I'm trying to say is that each period has its own different feel, and I feel like this civilization gives us a completely different feel as well, just how you can analyze the way they look at medicine, and it was a real delight to look into. But they express themselves through their art, and I think that they were expressing their medical practices through their art, through their ceramic, through their craftsmanship. And it just makes them significant. There are people that existed from 100 to 600 AD in North Peru as well, and they flourished. Some people debate whether it was 600 AD or 700 AD, but again, that what has been debated is how these people were run. So like I said, who were these people? So like I said in the introduction, it says 600, but most sources say 700. So I thought I'd add that in after once I discussed it. But it was an area that was in northern Peru, and it was near the present day Trujillo. But I think what is important with them is who they were as people. Their culture is still being debated. And unlike some other civilizations of the time period, they were not politically organized as a monolithic empire or a state. What they served to act their purpose, they were just a group of autonomous polities that had shared a common culture. So because of that, they were able to create a culture that they shared, but they had their own different ways of running things, which I think is very different. In a way, if you're going to look at it in terms of political, anyone who looks at politics, they like looking at this whole term of quasi-federal, which you could say that it could have represented an early form of quasi-federal practices. So quasi-federal means it's like Britain. Wales is quasi-federal. It's not fully separate from the government, but it kind of is, and that's what I was trying to say. This brought a lot of debate about that, and I think it just shows that they're a very highly civilized society that deserves to have the recognition, and they definitely had an influence in a lot of areas as well, which has been discussed. The influence, it'd gone through the rich iconography that they had, and definitely for their traditional medical practices, which had spread through the southern and northern, the Moche people. And they have links with other cultures as well. So this is definitely done through their pottery and ceramic, and this is definitely then seen through their medical example. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think that what is interesting with this this discussion on these people and in terms of their medical practices is how you can see that they are able to show how their communities are run as well, just by sending out these ceramics. So this spirituality is one that's an important one, is one that's really considered to be important, because it's the belief of the spiritual healer as being part of the community, and is the one that people go to for advice. Again, this is a time period where you get a sense where they're almost obsessed with their health. They want good health, and understandable, but It's almost like you're seen in every aspect, and this has come out with very interesting interpretations in terms of their iconography. This was, what was thought was that ceremonial leaders were helped to keep the good health of citizens at a very good standard, and they were known as the medicine man, really, that you do see in a lot of Southern American cultures as well. And they just provided as a way of being the practitioner of the area. But again, you see this link being made that I have discussed before, where spirituality and physical health goes hand in hand almost, and this is definitely a strong example of that. And they like to express things through art, and this image shows the decapitator. So he was a god that was in control of the air and the water and the land, and a lot of people have used that as saying that this was a good luck charm, and he was put everywhere with the agriculture. Agriculture was very important to these people, and I agree with that interpretation. However, you could also push this further as well, as seen as keeping a balance in people's health and keeping good luck with the individuals. This was definitely argued by some scholars. It seems like at the moment with this civilization is rich in archaeology, it's rich in a lot of things. However, it's just a lot of debate, and people are still trying to see where they fit in with it. People are still experimenting with the interpretations we're having in terms of medical history. So that's very interesting. I feel like we're in the early start of it. And it's nice and interesting to see that a lot of scientific and medical journals are actually taking part in investigating their history. It's a shame really that you don't really see it in terms of history sites. In terms of history sites, they look at the political aspects of this city. This is not the focus of these seminars. The focus is to look at the medicine. So like I said, this was argued to be something, iconography that was dotted around, that showed their belief in trying to keep everything all in order. But what is interesting is this is a clear identification of who they are, and it's a mark of their identification. What is used as well with spirituality is the use of hallucinogenic drugs. They believed that having these spiritual awakenings were able to keep you in a good sense of spiritual health. You were releasing all these negative emotions that you were harboring inside, and that is kind of a hint of what I'm going to sort of look into, of what they believed to be. Because another thing is that they had a very interesting, complex way of what they believed, and I think what is the issue with looking at this, what has made people a little bit iffy, is that there's nothing sort of written down exactly. It's all done through iconography and through ceramics that we've got our ideas of thinking. But people have been using bioarchaeology to actually look further into any medicinal plants being used, and they definitely saw the use of hallucinogenic drugs being used to actually keep themselves in order. There's also ceremonies as well. And definitely see that they've they relied heavily on the earth as well. So yeah, it was very interesting, because another thing is they don't really look at prevention rather than cure. It's normally sort of how to deal with things, which is quite interesting, because a lot of civilizations like to look at the prevention rather than the cures overall. So the origins of illness, this thought with these people, is again quite murky, deserves more attention. But again, this is this whole idea of evil being the common belief, which we've seen with many civilizations and cultures at this time, before this time, and after this time. Evil is thought to be the reasoning behind it, and I think that's just because of the negative effects that it can have on a person. It really has got this strong tie that something's not wrong, and when they don't really know what is going on, supernatural beliefs tend to be the ones that pick things up. So this is seen with many civilizations and cultures of this time. This is definitely seen that that illness is seen to be something that's unusual and spectacular, and it's taken a great interest with these people in how they fought as well. So this is meant the spirituality, keeping that in good check, was the answer of many illnesses of people in this culture. That's why there was an importance held on these spiritual healers, these medicine mans, if you want to think. What's quite interesting is that past belief is that medicine man referred to it had to be a man at all times, but you do find with these people they do have a very good idea that gender doesn't really affect this, and they do have some female spiritual healers, but they were definitely the important part of society. You don't really get a sense in my eyes of rulers. It was more gods, and these spiritual healers were almost like something that was sent down from their gods to actually keep them in check, and they were heavily praised in society because they kept themselves in a good health, bring them back to good health, and they were able to discuss further on how to keep a balance. So they generally felt like these people were the answer to everything, and this was just due to their empirical evidence in front of them. If they felt like a prayer had worked with or a ceremony had worked with a headache, then it was definitely the answer to that issue. But ultimately it's just that idea that the soul is at risk of this bad health. Physical health was just a reflection of the mind of the person, and the mind of the person was what was at concern. It was almost like your body's a shell that needs to be protected right until the soul's done enough growing before it can move on. So it was almost like letting yourself grow up. It reminds me of something that I had watched on YouTube. It was very interesting. I remember watching and thinking, what the hell have my friends put on? It was a very interesting video. It was called The Egg on YouTube. And it was just sort of looking at this person who had died, and they died, and they thought they were going to heaven, but they wasn't, and they were met by this man, and this man came up to him and basically explained that you live every life on earth, so every life on earth, every individual is you. But it's all different ways of growing in different aspects, and each person is a different generation of you. So what they come to the conclusion is that evil people were just the earlier forms of you before you learned to have some morality, and you can live at different ages and different times in life until you actually completed it all, and you are then ultimately that one person that's had so many experiences that you're the righteous person and ready to go off into the afterlife. And I think that was you can relate that to something like this, because they did believe that not that you lived every life, but that the soul had to have some sort of growing before it passed on, and bad health was a way of challenging that, and it was something that we had to keep in check to ensure that the soul was able to grow and experience all these things before it moved on in the end. But I think they have an interesting way of showing these medical practices, their beliefs, in a lot of their art and a lot of their craftsmanship as well. And I think kudos to them for doing it really well, and actually providing such great artifacts that we can actually observe today. So this idea of feelings of emotions that I was discussing, this was from an article that I had read that had a very interesting stance on it. There's a lot of articles on JSTOR as well in terms of these people. Like I said, JSTOR is free. You just click download PDF, or you can just read it online. But yeah, it's very helpful in terms of academic journals. And it is something that it's not a scam or anything bad, because it is used by universities as well. But I thought I'd just signpost you that, JSTOR. I think I go on about it every lesson, more or less every lesson that I do, just because I just love how much it can give you just insight of things, because sometimes there's only so much you can get from Google. And that's what I found with these people, is that there was a lot Google in terms of their culture, but no one really focused on the medical practices. And then when you did look at the medical practices, you found them in the academic bit, and it was frustrating then to try and find anything that was accessible. But JSTOR was actually able to save my bottom and provide some evidence for my claims before I start sprouting things that probably would make no significance at all.
What's it called, Jay?
JSTOR, so it's JSTOR, just all one word as well.
Okay.
It's really weird, but it's mostly historical and things like that. But you can find other disciplines as well. So art is on there as well, and because I know you like art and symbolism and art. So yeah, it's a very interesting website. But reading one of the articles they had on there, I've forgotten the name of it, but it was someone called Anna, I've forgotten the last name, but she provided some great analysis of everything, really, of looking. She did sort of look at sources, she did look at some of the beliefs of the people, she sort of showed how this was something that was carried on as well for a good couple of years, and she said that their belief was centered around feelings and emotions, which I think is a very interesting concept, and it was another reason why I felt like they had to be done, because we don't really get to see this as much as other civilizations, because again it was that fear of evil and just sort of preventing things. But they understood that illness was just a result of maybe your emotional health, and that's definitely true. Last week it was very stressful. I ended up ill and I'm on antibiotics now, but all is good. It's nothing to worry about. I'm just one of those people that are just unfortunate. It's probably why medical history fascinates me, because it's just something that's quite central in my life. But yeah, they believed things like anger, for example, that was to come through in terms of stomach aches, headaches, a lot of discomfort in the stomach, especially in terms of things like sickness and diarrhea. They generally felt like this was a result of that. And another example was jealousy. So one example that this historian had said was jealousy, in the example that she gave, was jealousy of a small child whose mother was expecting, and they were able to sense that the mother was pregnant, and this was coming out in the child in upset stomachs and fevers, generally not being themselves, a change in behaviour as well, really. And they said that these sorts of things had to be dealt with in the correct manner. So there was ceremonies that was used by the spiritual healers to try and deal with that. Also, there was also an importance laid on sort of, understanding and acknowledging the person's feelings, which I think is a very modern concept. It's something that people say now. But it was all about as well, they also had drinking vessels that targeted these sorts of issues as well. That I think they had these drinking vessels as a way of trying to target all these aspects in life. But like I said, this affects the individual's behaviour, that not wanting to eat, maybe being lethargic, not leaving bed, being very irritable. They believe that all this was just further encouraging an imbalance in the body, and it had to be something that was actively dealt with. And so that's why a lot of gods was used to actually promote some health in the area. And you definitely see that in iconography as well, which we'll further look into. So another aspect of it, I know that these are a lot of wordy slides, but the images will be showing up soon, I promise. So one of them was contamination, which I thought was quite an interesting one. Again, this is an idea that sort of dragged through time, but is that the contamination disease this is thought to originate from someone that was thought to be spiritually unclean persons. And the remedy for the individual to seek spiritual healing, it was to ensure that there was no longer a risk of them to themselves and the individuals. So that also left with isolation was one of them for a time period. The whole idea of self-isolating, etc., isn't in this a norm for us now. We're quite sick of hearing it, but it was something that has been practiced in been practiced through time, there was the understanding, and you see that that's through their empirical observations as well. That is another reason why they done certain practices, because they felt like from eyewitness accounts that they were very effective. But contamination ultimately was thought to be a sign of someone being deeper evil. They had the deeper evil and the deeper evil emotions inside them in the individual that could not be budged, so that the anger was just sort of out of control. There has been arguments of bloodletting being used for things like this as well, which is considered to be something of other cultures as well. But again, there's no proper evidence of that as of yet, and it'd be quite interesting to see. So this one I want to look at is the importance of agriculture as well. So I'm sort of getting the basics down first before I discuss more into the medical practices, but it's slowly getting vamped up more and more of what they believe in. And agriculture was the most centre thing for them. It was the most important thing, and you definitely see it in their creations. You definitely see marks in land that suggest animals being put into the landscape, and that was seen to promote good agriculture, etc. But agriculture is important to them, not just for food and living brew. I think it also just showed that this was able to provide traditional herbal medicine to them. This was very important. None of them, this was considered to be the health axis of traditional practices as well. So what they were using was a lot of herbal medicines. There was thought to be 150 different species at the time of plants that they used in their medical practices, in their remedies. So some of them were thought to even be used in drinking vessels, that we will see. But this image just shows the worship of a god that's concerned with the agriculture, and I just wanted to show how it was important, because you can relate this into medicine. This was their health as well as their nutrients as well. But there was also evidence seen with the use of psychedelic cactuses as well. And I just realised I got that wrong. It was 510 species of different plants, not 150. Yes, and about 50% of these plants were also then used in colonial times as well. So they did serve a great big purpose right up until after their time as well. But the use of psychedelic cactuses that was in the area as well was also used in their medical practices, and you see it in their Moche art. They had different ingredients for different health conditions, which they all used through empirical use. And without this importance held on agriculture, this would not be something that would carry on. And most plants that they had in the area was seem to have antibacterial activity, which is argued by a woman called Narala Pataguala. They discussed the globalization of traditional medicine, but she first looked at the different plants that you can see, and she definitely said that these were plants that had 76% effective but agents in them to prevent infection, etc. So a lot of them were used for drinking. A lot of them were also used as being put into a paste or put on a wound, etc., to just encourage that the person was in a better health. And these were all wildly collected. This was something some plants were wildly collected, some of the species, but some of them were definitely farmed as well, which they've seen with bioarchaeology, and they definitely have related it to their art, because here, like I said, is a god of agriculture, and they wanted to give thanks by providing them with all of this. It literally was their life. So this is something that was quite interesting. The image is meant to be something that's more past this people's time, but it was the most nearest example that I could get from what was being described. But it was thought to be healing altars there. So this was used in the community to provide ceremonies of healing. And like I said, as time went on, there was more spiritual Christian ties to it as well. But this has definitely been debated on whether the Moche people had actually seen this, but I generally think that they didn't. But they described it to be like pagan altars, which I don't know. I feel like that's problematic because there's different altars for different things. Each belief and religion have their sort of own way of altars. Like the Catholic Church, for example, has an altar, and that's seen as an altar of sacrifice where you have the body of Christ being sacrificed on the altar. But this was an altar to provide good health, and it was all different types of staffs that were used as well. There was there that would be the central focus of a ceremony to ensure the health of a person. But there's evidence of a significance of the altar, but it's just, again, further debate, something that people haven't really looked into further, and definitely should be, because I think it just added a little bit to the confusion, and it would just be nice to know the significance of so many staffs. But they definitely did have other things in there, like different types of rocks or plants placed down as well, that would encourage an intention. Really, it's like a manifestation, an intention of having good health, really, in a person. So that's definitely something that I thought was quite significant to note. So now we get to these drinking vessels, really, and they're very well preserved, and I think they're actually amazing. You can definitely see the identity as well that they have in them, how they're able to show their mark and all the different types of creations that you can get from them. But these are argued by Angel Chaka to be evidence of a hunchback, these ones. So she believed that these were evidence being shown. I think this was on an article that was on a PDF file, so if you're interested, I can chuck that in the chat at the end. But yeah, she took these images here, and she said that these were evidence of a hunchback because of the way they were, and this then led her to then further debate on whether these drinking vessels purposes were meant to cure maybe back pain or like issues with a hunchback, or just trying to prevent that. She generally think that was one of the significance of it, was these weren't just everyday drinking vessels. They held an importance spiritually in terms of medicine. So I thought that was a very interesting debate, because a lot of people seem to sort of take them and look at their identity, which is important, I think, to look at identity in terms of any archaeological artifact. But I think you go in one step further, a little bit more advanced, to look for the medical aspects of it as well. But I think it just shows how they're very distinctive in their artifacts, and how this is, definitely led to a debate of his purposes. Whether this was just a sign of identity or just a sign of medicine. But I do think it is very interesting to look at, and just sort of get an aspect of these people really did have a great skill for designing artifacts. And I just think it's very interesting, because obviously we've looked at clay tablets, etc., and these people didn't put it in clay tablets or etc. This was all put into little drinking vessels, which is so amazing that it is still in one piece. But this can have it can be an area that has a lot of generalization, but this was thought to be a way of curing a sickness or an issue. It's almost like drinking something would repel the evil inside you. Is almost like a possession that's sort of being exercised. And I think they did recognize that sickness, illness, any problem with the body can sort of strike randomly rather than just families as well. When we were discussing what they thought about emotions, they understood that could happen to any walk of life, and they gave so many different examples as well. But these have been sort of seen as ceremonial artifacts as well, because they felt like what was argued as well, especially by the book that I got this idea from, was that these were artifacts that were personalized to each individual. So they represented an individual that had a hunchback, for example, and they designed it based on them, so it would be more effective, and it was, you know, it came more into their spiritual belief and their behaviour as well, that this was really targeting that person in a good way. But I think it definitely shows the magical aspect of all this, and then you've had a lot of contemporary people saying this was possibly a sign of the placebo effect, which I think you see that in a lot of medical debate. You could argue that with the Anglo-Saxon Bowles Leach book, that it was all placebo, the way that people felt this, but this was something that they definitely felt like was really important, and seen as a way of healing. So another one is that orthopedics has been coming through as well. This was another thing that was discussed in the same article by the same person. For some reason my last paragraph is chipped away, so a bit annoyed at that, but on a whole these were evidence of orthopedic practices. They believe that this was evidence of maybe showing issues with a limb, or issues with just any injury, and they definitely felt like this was something, a way of showing also an amputation of as well, which we further get into. But these ones were interesting because they weren't sure whether they were meant to depict amputation. I think A and B definitely do. And I think C was just showing parts of the body that they were targeting to create this good health. And then the other ones, I do think they're showing, I think he's holding his chest there. He's not feeling too well. But I think on a whole that this was argued to be the sign of orthopedics. There were injuries, dealing with injuries of different parts of the body. And again, they all look similar in some sort of way, but they don't. They all have their own little defining feature about them that sets them from everyone else, which is quite interesting. But this has brought an interesting aspect of debates, because it shows again the identity of people, and people have discussed the identity that's come through it. But they generally, scholars generally believe that this is sort of pointing towards any issue that they found in arms or legs, etc., and that this was put into a drinking vessel with the person's likeness in mind to actually further create a better health for them. Another one I want to see, these were quite interesting, these ones, and their depictions. So they're all was amputation. So I think the practice of amputation this is something that you see in many civilizations, in many cultures. It's important. It's a quick way of dealing with something that might affect the rest of the body. It's all about looking after the rest of the body, but this is a way of, I think this is almost like an aftercare sort of depiction of it. So one's a drinking vessel and one's an actual statue and figure, but it's almost like they were done to sort of show what is going on with these people. But I think it's almost a way of them sort of providing good luck with their health, again keeping their actual likeness involved. So the first one that was discussed in an article was quite interesting, because they believe that this was showing the arms and the lips being amputated, and this was related then to what I said was a big discussion with these people, was the political climate associated with them. Like I said, this wasn't a very politically organised civilization, but people wanted to find some aspects of it, and definitely there was rules being held down. And I think the first image that we can see on the left is something that represents the rules of the area. And what I mean by that is it was evidence of a practice of punishment, that the person's arms and lips were cut off, and this was then put into their drinking vessels. And I definitely think that is another way of them documenting what has happened. But I also think this is another way of ensuring that the person carries on in good health afterwards. Again, drinking vessel might have some herbal medicine in there that they saw had benefits in keeping away infection and keeping that person in good health. I did see some remedies out there where they used a lot of plants nearby, such as potatoes and spices, to actually create this mixture that would seem to encourage a better health of the person when they're going through something like an amputation. But again, that was theorized, but it could lead to a very interesting debate, definitely. And then the second image is a man that they argue to have amputated feet. They said this one's been debated on whether it was a medical practice, whether it was needed, or whether that was punishment as well. But it definitely shows the way that they're showing it in their art, in their craftsmanship. But I also think it's a way of them sort of acknowledging the need for these practices to keep everyone in tip-top shape, but also to create order. I think that's what's the interesting thing that I've come out of all of this, is that there's some sort of political tie, and 16-year-old Jess is quite excited because I used to like political history, but it drives me up the wall now. It was nice to just see that relation of two things, one that I currently love and one that I do love, but it's not something that I focus on quite a lot now. But it's probably because when you look at political history as well, there's a lot of names and organisations being involved, and I'm not very good at names, especially when I'm reading books. I've got to write the people's names down and what they do, etc. So, but looking at this, I think it's another way of history of looking at just their ways of punishment, how they're able to keep order. But I think it's also a way of keeping balance. I think these drinking vessels are serving as like little sort of treatments afterwards to encourage an upkeep of the body, especially after something like a big surgery like this. So another one that was quite interesting was fertility that was brought up in this. The reason why I thought it was interesting was because when you go on Google and you type in drinking vessels of these people, or maybe you just look at the medicine, you do get greeted with a Wikipedia page that shows you all the artifacts that are in the museum. However, it was a struggle to try and get hold of artifacts that showed fertility that wasn't extremely explicit. There was all different types of positions, and I just thought this probably, if this was to go on YouTube, it probably wouldn't be so safe. So I managed to find a very child-friendly one of the two people kissing. It just seemed to be the only PG one that I could get hold of, because the other ones I was looking at, I was like, oof. It's quite detailed. There's too much information. Yeah, definitely, Anne. Honestly,
what your adult audience, how adult we are.
Yeah. No, it would definitely, I think, take the direction from this away. And some of the things that were depicted as well, I just thought, I don't know, I don't think I could just discuss this seriously with that being on the screen. So I thought kissing's nice. Everyone likes a good. So we'll add it in. But this is a drinking vessel that they thought was connected with looking at fertility as well. So this had gone beyond looking at remedies, looking at practices, but it was almost like a ceremonial rituals. Practices were also important in ensuring health, but this was a sort of sexual health that was important to them as well, because they needed to keep this civilization going. That was important, and I think they understood the issue of fertility, and they believed that drinking from a vessel like this, and again, there's not much noted on what they used in their herbal medicine. Like I said, there's a lot of species of plants that were around at this time that's not around now, which is sort of, I think, like I said, it's in the early stages of discussing this in terms of medicine, but it would be very interesting to see what they come up with recently, because they are still discussing it. A lot of it is in scientific terms, which is nice, because whenever, I don't know what it is for me, but when I see anything scientific or has some sort of technology involved to verify it, I just seem to believe it a little bit more. I think that's why archaeology should be the horse that pulls the cart, and then historians should sort of tag on after it. But they're definitely trying to sort of pinpoint what they were used, and they definitely did use that psychoactive cactus plant that I mentioned. But I think, again, this is a ceremonial use to encourage a balance with bodies. Again, balance is important. These remedies, these ceremonial issues were meant to keep away the evil that was preventing from someone from being pregnant. And so these were used, like I said, it was different sexual acts were used to encourage fertility. But it was very interesting because these people were something, it was obviously seen as something that was very natural to them, but very important to them as well, because there's loads of drinking vessels depicting things like this. And I think it just gives them a more personal history, only because you know, you just see what these people believed and how they represented it. And it, you know, was just almost like something that's just gone on for years ago. But this whole idea of spiritual healers being involved in fertility was a way of just sort of encouraging the good to happen, and to encourage that the person and the body are all in working shape and they're all doing the same things. But I think it's very interesting just how well these drinking vessels have been made. I think one thing that's interesting is the handles of the drinking vessels. I think they're all similar, and I think that you can see it in that one over there as well. I think that's another thing that you can get about their identity as well, is how they're able to show these drinking vessels, but you know it's them just because of the way they've got the handles and the spout from it. So I don't know, I just think they're very beautiful drinking vessels, very complex, and it definitely reflects the different aspects of ceremonial use in terms of medicine and the spiritual healing. So one thing else that I wanted to look at is that there was quite an interesting debate. This was to be the Moche mummy, and it was a female from about 450 to 500 AD. So that's the date that they have in between. So about 50 years. But she was referred to as the Lady Okeoa, and she was very well preserved. She had this amazing tomb with loads of different artifacts around her. But what has caused the interest of medical historians is the tattoos that's present on her. They believe that they were able to represent qualities that an individual possibly lacked. A lot of them were animals, so this holds an iconographical importance that was thought to represent the qualities that they wanted. So different animals meant different things. For example, eagle was seen to be very strong. There was all different types of animals that land and sea that was represented on a definitely what came into some of the discussion, which I have discussed in earlier classes, is this idea of tattoos being a way of acupuncture as well, being placed in areas to encourage the balance of the body, which is very interesting. But she's very well preserved. You can see her tattoos as well, that all along her arm, and I just think it's amazing, because again we get to see more of an identity of someone. But what they were able to see is that relate this to identity and see that she was actually once thought to be an important spiritual healer. That's what they felt like this indicated. There's loads of debates on who this person was, but they said that there was motifs on here that represented someone who was of importance of a spiritual healer, and that's what she acted like. And it just shows how spiritual healers were also treated in society, that they were given their own special ways of burial, and very respected. And I think her tomb really just shows the embrace of balance in society, how they really appreciated keeping everything at a good level and very steady and balanced, to ensure that they were a good health. And she was just a reflection of that in every way, right up until her death. So we're just going to lead to the conclusion now. So like, this is definitely an ancient civilization. There's just provided further evidence to me of medical practices, but I think the medical evidence is very unique, and because of that I think it is something that I adore, because how unique it is. I just think it's unique because you just see things written down or put into paintings, but they were able to put in these very well preserved drinking vessels that depict lots of things. And the fact that they believe that the drinking vessels not only showed the illness of the person, the issue with the person, but it was able to show the the identity of the person suffering and what they look like, to just further target them more specifically, to ensure that manifestation, that intention of good health, was being targeted more stronger than just sort of doing it on any generic person on a drinking vessel. I think what is what is important as well is this connection that they have with spirituality and medicine. They both go in hand, and keeping the physical health in check, and physical health is important for the soul, to allow it to grow, to actually experience things, to actually make it the best that it can be for it to go to the afterlife. And keeping it in good check was definitely a result of spiritual ceremonial practices as well. But spiritual healers are depicted as well in ceramics. The book that I was looking at actually showed a depiction. I forgot to put it in, but it was a depiction of a priest or a priestess, actually, someone lying down, and they're putting their arms over them. So it was almost like a spiritual sort of possession of the evil out of the body. Again, that's something that you see in a lot of civilizations. It's something that idea lasts for a very long time throughout different civilizations and different cultures, but I think is able to show the practices, the beliefs of the Moche people, and how they're able to further influence other people with their medical experience. So this was done through empirical observation. Like I said, they saw things for, well, we'll see if it worked, and if it did, it definitely did. And you definitely see quite a few people argue that maybe this was a placebo effect, but if it did, so what, it worked for them. And it's interesting that you see more of a focus with dealing with illness rather than sort of trying to prevent it, which is normally a common theme. But I think they give us a different insight to a different aspect of medicine, which is very important, and very important for the understanding the area back to its roots, and it should be kept alive. So I'm going to ask if there's any questions now. So if, Richard, is there anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Oh, really interesting.
Hello, thank you, Richard.
Yeah. Well, actually, how did they die out? Is there any sort of...
No, I think that it was just due to colonialism, is how they died out. I couldn't really see anything in terms of plague, etc. But no, I think it would be quite an interesting civilization as well, to see in other lessons that Karl does, personally, because they seem to be a culture that's rich in many other things, and there was things I wanted to talk about that we couldn't, like the way they showed their identity through their dressing, and how they influenced other areas, and what influence they took from other areas as well, and their art. But yeah, no, that definitely would be a good discussion. But thank you, Richard. And anything that you'd like to add or ask? And you're on mute.
Who are you asking? Who are you asking?
Anne. Oh, sorry, Alan. Yeah.
Christine.
Yeah, Anne, that's confused me.
Christine, Florence, Anne, no.
Loads of different names like me now, Anne. Anything that you'd like to ask or add?
I know you've actually covered quite a lot, and I was just thinking of that god, the decapitator, reminded me of the Indian god Kali. She has scissors, and she cuts. She's in charge of death, isn't she? She knows when to cut the cord, of life, sort of thing. And that was something that rung home. And then cactus, obviously we're all wild about aloe vera now, aren't we? We think aloe vera's really got every quality you can imagine. So that's some sort of cactus, isn't it? There's sort of a cactus leaf. And the hazel, I was thinking, you know, wood is always very important in spiritual practices. Whether, you know, the staff, the saints, or they always depicted holding a staff, weren't they?
Yeah.
Saints, because that was like, it was a symbol of the bishop, I think, or certainly a pastor, you know, certainly a spiritual leader. And then I just loved the way those vessels, they're so tactile, you know, they're introducing, it's like a fourth element really of seeing, you know, visual, tactile, easily understood, you know. I think it goes into, sinks into a simple mind, you know, it's not simple, but obviously they didn't write or have any, you know, writing.
Yeah, I think it allows people who couldn't read or write to actually understand.
Yeah, I think they really, and it does remind me of medieval, you know, the iconography on cathedrals, you know, the what are they called? I've forgotten what they're called, gargoyles, and all the you know, the sculptures, you know, that were done, and that was from an earlier kind of period, really. I think because we were talking about good and evil a lot, you know. So no, it was really interesting.
No, thank you, Anne. I think another way of looking at staffs as well. You know, if you look at some other beliefs, i.e., Wicca, for example, which is something that's derived from paganism, you know, spreading throughout the world. They have a use on their altar as like a wand, really. Is it like it's almost like a smaller staff to direct what they want to do, and also to draw circles of protection. So it could have acted as a way of that as well, and is then sort of pushed into Christian beliefs with the bishop holding one. I think it's all about direction, really, as well. But no, thank you for that, Anne. It was really good feedback. Thank you. Ellen, is there anything that you'd like to ask or add?
Yeah, I sort of like to see it completely from a different angle. The people in charge, as it were, these spiritual people, were ruling by fear and terror, using physical actually deforming people deliberately. They were saying that they were gods and all sorts of other things, which of course don't exist per se, and absolutely leading by fear and controlling people, also controlling them by the use of drugs. I think the cactus you mean is Lafoffa Williamsy, but again, it's not a pleasant experience at all. And so everything that they did under the heading spiritual, or we must make you well, or this is what it were actually horrific. And the power they had was phenomenal. Going to the pottery that actually illustrates very well exactly what they were doing. The majority of the pottery shows anal sexual acts between men. The very few that are there of women, there are women suckling children and being having anal sex with a man. And none of it is nice. It's all absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
In every way you could say, I don't think you can just say, oh, it's all spiritual, it's lovely, it's fantastic, I want to be a tree. If you were there, it would be foul, I'm sorry. But if you're subject to physical deformities as a punishment, that you were forcibly given drugs and you had constant anal sex, I really don't think you'd enjoy life much. They had sex slaves, they had all sorts of things that were all not nice. And actually,
have you been reading up on this while we were listening?
Yeah, I do two things at once. It's called multitasking. It was horrendous.
Yeah. Definitely.
They did do amazing things, like they invented electrochemical replacement plating and depletion gilding of pottery and things. And they used copper covered in gold and silver and that. So they had some beautiful things. but the actual rule of their people was horrific.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, and you definitely see that
made up about these gods and what they had to do and how they had to behave and all this drugs they had to be pumped with. I don't think that's normal or nice in any form.
No, and I definitely think
by far the majority of the pottery found is abysmal. So when you're talking about the lovely human form on their drinking vessels, whoa, no way.
But you're thinking of it. Whoever wrote that information, you know, who was it who wrote that information? It's research, and they've only had the visual.
I think it's the same information that Jess looked at.
But they've only had the same visual content. They haven't had any writing. It's all somebody's point of view.
No, it's all pottery with these explicit sexual details on. And in fact,
that's what I didn't really want to add in here.
In how much detail the genitalia are shown. And
it also says genitalia easy to understand.
Nice.
No, I mean, I don't think Jess said it was a lovely spiritual Garden of Eden, really. I think it's just the fact that, yeah, we you know, I was brought up a Catholic, so, you know, I was well and truly indoctrinated by the time I was 8, you know, 5, is it 6 or 7? And you know, it is a way of control. And it's always been a way of control, you know.
Yeah.
But there's some good things come out of it. It's just it all has to be, you know, modified.
Well, yeah, one of the things that you said, Jess, was that that lady of Kao, who was presumed to be a spiritual healer.
Oh yeah.
The tattoos showing animals, you thought that that showed what the person lacks. But that's in other Mexican and other cultures is what their spirit being is, not what they lack, but what they are within. One good film, I don't know if you've seen it, is The Emerald Forest.
No, I have not.
All right, try to look it up and look at it. It's quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
It illustrates quite a lot of what you're talking about.
You ought to watch The Terror, because honestly, that's about a beast that takes in the spirit of the person they killed, you know. They breathe it in, you know. It's like everything Jess has been talking about this last few weeks has reminded me of that, because it's all about the Eskimos and you know, the way they saw this beast as a spiritual leader almost, you know, their spiritual guide, and yet he was killing all the explorers and things, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's just
controlling mind games.
Yeah,
controlling mind games, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I agree with Ellen. Is that there were certain aspects of the pottery that, and it was the reason why I didn't add it in, that was quite
but what
horrible.
I point out is that it's literally by far the most prevalent pottery that they found.
And definitely, like I said, the politics of it. There's quite a few articles to discuss that as well. But I think what medical historians really are here, they're trying to interpret the archaeology in something else, and I think it is going down you know, one that's caused a lot of debate, which I like something that's a bit controversial, definitely, but and I think you hit the nail on the head that it, you know, it definitely showed forms of punishment, like I said, with the amputation as well of it, reflecting, if you do this, then this might be the result of that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
It's far-fetched to cut off somebody's lips because they've got a headache, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that the lips part was definitely to do horrible. Something, you know, a punishment of what someone had done. Yeah, but the article that I read on it discussed that, but they sort of looked at it as like the drinking vessels, but also as a warning, but it was also a way of just showing how they were yeah, that's that's the image there the Carl's on the screen. The person's face in front looks a bit surprised as well. He doesn't look very happy, does he?
Yeah, and yet again, there's one behind the other, not in front.
Yeah. Yeah, so very interesting debate, and thank you for that, Alan. Thank you for your contribution. I like the fact that you multitasked as well to actually have something to say. I appreciate that. But thank you everyone for today, and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much. Is Karl coming back, or is he just going to talk to you?
Well, if Karl wants to say something, he can now before everyone leaves. No. I don't think he does. So I'm here.
Oh,
he's here.
I've been listening to all the all the stuff, and I just thought I'd add, just to add a bit more fun to proceedings. I just thought I'd add one more image to spice things up. I didn't know if you used this one, the one following, Jess.
I've got something in my head. I'm not sure whether you've got it. No, it wasn't actually. It was the one that I had in my head was that it's actually two people giving oral sex, which was.
Ah, yes, I know the one.
Yeah, but yeah, these are also ones. Again, a lot of debates on them.
I mean, it's like India, in India, they have a lot of explicit sort of sexual practices. And that's spiritual. I mean, it's supposed to be really spiritual, isn't it?
I think.
Too, won't you?
I think the issue is, if we look at this as a male-dominated society, then obviously you can see what Ellen is saying has got plausibility.
Yeah.
You can see a female-dominated society.
Oh, yeah.
With the Gouache today. Then that puts a completely different perspective on everything that you see. In fact, it could be seen that women who may have been producing this pottery are actually mocking men. So you could see it from that angle, and I think you have to see some kind of balance. And also the other thing as well is, as we were seeing with the Gouache, the way the bodies were actually being treated was very different over a long period of time. Now, if we see pottery as having different meanings over a long period of time, Ellen could be right for the first part, Jessica could be right for another part, and whoever was producing the pottery. The biggest problem is we've got with history is taking everything together and trying to come out with an equation, which is always the problem. It's like I could say, whenever I'm looking at the Roman stuff on a Wednesday, there's always completely different meanings to every single thing that you see in the Roman context. For example, the biggest myth is we got phase 1 and 2 between 100 years AD and 200, and the fort was used on a temporary basis. So, and you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. If it was used on a temporary basis over 100 years, is that actually temporary? And you've got all these different interpretations. And the problem is what we do in a modern mind is we put our modern preconceptions onto everything that we're seeing. And that is very, very dangerous when you actually do that.
Yeah, it's like they say, people in history are different to people. They're different people. We have to get into their minds.
The issue is about. I'll say it. The issue is to do with the anal sex side of things, right? Michelle thinks it's abhorrent. I would say the same. Ellen saying the same. I can speak for anybody else. However, to some areas of society, isn't abhorrent. So therefore, they have their interpretation. It's going to be completely different from my interpretation and Ellen's interpretation. From a modern point of view.
But deformity is not too good in any situation, is it?
No.
or telling people that gods are angry with them and that they deserve punishment. Or saying if you have a headache, it shows you've got a really bad soul.
Yeah.
That's all coercion.
But I agree, anger makes you have a bad stomach.
Yeah, well,
There's all sorts of things. Yeah.
No, I just feel my blood pressure rise when I've got anger. I'm just trying to withhold all the bad swear words.
I'm usually pretty noisy if I'm angry, or I go for a walk or something, you know.
And you scream to people who go past you. Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I do feel like I don't have blood pressure problems, but no.
No, I don't. I just feel like the blood pressure goes up sometimes.
There's pressure in your brain.
Yeah. This is why I don't get angry often.
Jessica, can I bully you a bit? Say the name that's where Ellen is now.
Where she is now?
Yeah.
What, her name?
Yeah.
Siobhan.
Ah, you said it, and Ellen's disappeared.
Why?
What's he doing?
What are you up to, Carl?
I don't know. Ellen just disappeared. I think she saw the name Siobhan and she disappeared.
She did. She just left.
I think it's Siobhan. That's not Siobhan. It's Siobhan.
Most people can't say it. And what about Vaughan?
Vaughan.
Come on now, we're going. We got homes to go to.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Anne's hungry.
You'll have to close.
Well, I certainly feel like a cup of tea. I could do with a cup of tea.
You'll have to close it. Anyway, Jessica, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Have you seen the comment? Sounds like people being forced to have the COVID jab. No, sorry, that's out of context. Good night, then. See you next week. Okay.
Night, Anne.
Okay,
See you
bye.
tomorrow, Richard.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Oh, so Anne's disappeared.
Don't forget my notes.
Yeah,
no, they'll be fine, and they'll be here by tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy days. Well, Ellen seemed to enjoy herself anyway.
Yeah, strong feelings from Ellen today.
Yeah, they're very strong feelings from Ellen. Flippin' heck. Don't show her images of people lying in bed together again.
Give her a heart attack.
Oh, flippin'! I'm glad I wasn't.
Anne was jumping in as well for my defence. she researched it.
Oh,
in all fairness, I did. I looked at academic research, but it was just very unusual interpretations of it all.
Oh God, yeah.
Next week, I think I might do something more solid.
Yeah, but yeah, just don't stay away from Moche art.
Yeah.
Moche art.
That's a strong strong feelings, very emotive about it.
Oh God.
No, I like that. There was a good feedback at the end. I find good discussion.
Yeah. I oh, happy days. Yeah. So I put out live.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's still live now. So yeah. Yeah. I think Ellen's probably watching it live, and yeah. So anyway, so that's it really. So what I'll do, obviously I've got to be in touch about a few things, and I will speak to you. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, no, that's cool, Carl. Yeah, I'll speak to you soon. 100%.
Very good, and yeah, all right then. That's it.
Yeah, no, cool.
Good night. Anyway,
good night, Carl.
Well done on that. You did very well.
Thank you. Take care, Carl. I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. This is the end of the recording. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. We'll end this on YouTube as well. And random FX, great lesson again. Thanks. So yes, so we've anyway, thanks for watching, Jessica, and I like to spice it up at the end, and nobody could actually see me today as well, so oh yeah, there I am. So anyway, I'm going to dash myself. I can close this down and I'll put the usual thing at the end. So we've got www.archaeologyonline.weebly.com. So if anyone's interested, thanks RandomFX, and yes, that's what comes of being a member. You get these extra little things that people pay for, which you do pay for because you're a member on you. Anyway, thank you very much, and oh, we just got somebody else joined as well. So so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to dash because I've got to have something to eat and drink. We've got stew, and oh, we've got 4 people watching now, so that's great. So keep, yeah, we got to keep up the good work. We got to keep flowing, and yeah, my lounge here looks like a burial ground. S Wood, no, you haven't, Mr. S Wood. Well, no, it is actually pre-recorded. No, God, not pre-recorded. It is actually recorded, so you can actually get that on YouTube. And S Wood, if you joined, press the join button. You get to watch lots of these things before everybody else as well. So yes, press the join button. Lots of different rates. So yes, so we did a mock A today, and on anyone interested on Monday. So I'll type this on. This coming Monday at what time is it? 8 p.m. On Monday we'll be looking at King Arthur. And when we look at King Arthur on Monday, as people know, they know I like to speak. So on Monday we'll be taking some of the stories from an old book known as Tales About Wales. This is dated 1837, and it's in a title titled People of Britain, King Arthur. So that's what we're going to be doing. And the interesting thing about these books is that they're obviously anything that's written 200 years ago or thereabout is obviously much older than anything that has been written like now. That makes sense. So anyway, so a little thing about King Arthur just to end the evening. So when good King Arthur ruled this land, he was a goodly king. He bought 3 pecks of barley meal to make a bag pudding. A bag pudding the king did make, and stuffed it with plums. Large lumps of suet he put into it, as big as my 2 thumbs. So there you go, as big as my 2 thumbs. And you know, I shouldn't have got distracted there. The king and queen did eat thereof, and all the court beside. And what they could not eat that day, the queen next morning fried. So Merlin always seems to be Welsh, except on the BBC. That's true, and Hollywood as well. So Merlin on Hollywood. So anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say good night. So so you guys still out there, at the end of Jessica's class, I will see you on Monday, and we'll put the recordings up. As I say, join, big join. I like getting people to join by coaxing. Anyway, you can't have any of my soup because I'm eating it. So I'm going to say good night, and good weekend. Be safe. Bank holiday tomorrow. Brilliant. Anyway, bye bye. Hang on a minute, just sort of so obviously the live stream's a bit longer, so for those that missed the Moche lecture, there's 2 individuals lying in bed, which you don't often get on pottery. So Moche culture over 1,500 years old. God, I'm supposed to be finishing. My university lecturer said that I'd never finish anything because I'm always keeping going. Anyway, so we've got somebody else who's just joined us as well. Oh. There's a thing about trying to close things down on YouTube. You start and a slow build up, and then you get to the end, and then you sort of, oh yeah, that's for you, Mr. Wood. And one of the things that Jessica was in the recording will be on you, Mr. Wood or Mrs. Wood. And as I say, if you did join, then you'll be first to watch it. So so yeah, I might do a lecture on the Moche civilization in the next few weeks. Actually, it would be really interesting. So I might actually do that as a set class. So so take a note of that. Moche, probably completely the wrong pronunciation. So I've got a few weeks now to work out the right pronunciation of the Moche. So it's M, I think there's 2 dots above the O-C-H-E. So I'm off. So good night.